This is Powered by Learning, a podcast designed for learning leaders to hear the latest approaches to creating learning experiences that engage learners and achieve improved performance for individuals and organizations.
Powered by Learning is brought to you by DaVinci Interactive. We collaborate with our clients to bring order and clarity to content and technology. Learn more at davinci.com.
Hello and welcome to Powered by Learning. I'm your host, Susan Court. With me today is DaVinci Learning Solutions Director, Jenny Vidullo. And we are very pleased to welcome Dr. Janet Lockhart-Jones, a leadership strategist, speaker, executive coach, and corporate trainer who joins us from her San Francisco Bay Area office. Welcome, Janet.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
It's just nice to talk to you again after we met at that training industry conference several years ago, which seems like it was not that long ago, but it was at least 5 years ago.
5 years, absolutely.
I know.
All right. I am going to take it away. Great to be with you today, Janet. So on March 20th, I saw that you published an article, From Crisis to Opportunity, Live Virtual Training is Prime for Center Stage. In there, you talked about opportunities and possibilities of live virtual instructor-led training, but you also talked about some myths that are in the way. I'm curious what some of those myths are. Would you mind sharing?
Oh, I would love to share. In the article, I think I listed about 7 or 8 or 9 myths. So for the sake of time, I'll just share a few of them. And the ones that I'm about to share, Jenny, are in no particular order. But I think this first myth that I addressed in the article, and this might be the biggest myth of all, is that a webinar is the same as virtual instructor-led training. This, of course, is false. And this is in part what I think, Jenny, gives VILT a bad rap. As you know, there are literally tens of thousands of webinars held each day. The typical webinar duration is 60 minutes. Now, some webinars are pretty darn good. Some are good, and many are just not so good. Most webinars, as you know, are often one way, with perhaps a poll here and there, 1 or 2 pauses for questions. And with the expanded use of Zoom, and folks not used to delivering or facilitating on this platform, this further adds to the bad taste people get regarding live virtual training. The problem, I believe, is that most learners have never experienced a real, well thought out, carefully designed live virtual training event. And therefore, the only model that they're familiar with is the 60-minute webinar. The purpose of most webinars, unlike training, is to disseminate information to a lot of people. And with webinars, you can reach hundreds or even thousands. And because of the size of the audience, webinars are typically one-way communication events. With virtual instructor-led training, the optimal class size is not tens of thousands or hundreds, it's roughly 15 to 20, though I have had larger. Now, with the small audience size, there's a tremendous opportunity for interaction at really the highest level, assuming a course design that's engineered for this. The goal is not for the facilitator to do all the talking, as is the case in a typical webinar. Unlike webinars, virtual IoT is about igniting and facilitating learning and ultimately performance change through experiential, individual, and group activities. So that's the flavor of the first myth, Jenny, I want to debunk. The next myth that I would like to dispel is the one where the thinking is that anyone who has delivered training traditionally can readily excel in a live virtual training environment. Not true. In my opinion, live virtual training takes much more effort and energy than delivering in a traditional IoT classroom. Why? Because it can be very much mentally taxing. Your voice, how you use it, your listening skills, your questioning skills, using polls, whiteboards, chat, and fielding incoming questions all at the same time can become very, very taxing for the inexperienced virtual trainer. I've known excellent traditional trainers who have tried transitioning to VIOT only to give it up. The technology, the lack of face-to-face interaction, managing the platform just proved overwhelming. Additionally, like I do now, If the host, instructor, and platform expert are one and the same, preparation only comes through a massive amount of experience. However, for those who are new to virtual delivery, there are companies out there that specialize in nothing but hosting live events. The instructor then has to focus on just the content and participant engagement, but even that still takes time. The last myth, Jenny, that I'll share, again, in keeping with time, is that live virtual training is not interactive. Now, I previously gave you examples of interaction activities that we built into the redesign of the project management course. So this particular myth that live virtual training is not interactive is totally false. And let me share just a few best practices that can easily dispel that particular myth. As a virtual IMT instructor, it's important to give careful thought to the design of the course so that as the instructor, you know exactly where interaction needs to occur. And that starts even before participants arrive in the class. Engage learners in activities even before the session starts. This can be done via the chat room or via a whiteboard. Learners can share where they're located, what their job role is, something special or unique about themselves, anything that will ignite engagement. Secondly, when there are more than 10 people in a virtual class, it's important that the instructor does not spend precious time having people introduce themselves. I learned this the hard way, Jenny. I've had classes of 25 to 30, and I took the time to have people give the parameters I put up was 30 seconds. With people being people, it was turned into 2 or 3 minute introductions. So now for 30 people, I've wasted almost an hour. So what I've learned, and again, I learned the hard way, whenever you have more than 10 people in a virtual class, have people introduce themselves via the chat or on a whiteboard. Another best practice to maintain a high level of engagement is to have some type of small group or whole class activity every 3 to 5 minutes. This can be a poll question, a whiteboard entry, a chat entry, raise their hand, yes, no, whatever. And there's a myriad of options out there. Fourth, it's important that the virtual instructor engage learners to share personal experiences related to the content. My philosophy in training and instructing is I always want to learn as much from the learners as they learn from me. So I really encourage them to share their personal, professional experience as it relates to the course content, because remember, the instructor is not the one who should be talking all the time. Mm-hmm. And then the last one I'll talk about is maximize the use of breakout room work. A lot of especially new virtual IoT instructors, they shy away from breakout rooms because of the coordination issues. And if you don't get it right, it can really impact your session. But maximize the use of breakout room work. This facilitates learners working in small groups on very focused, objective-driven assignments. And then they get the opportunity to present back to the larger class. And breakout group work should emphasize key learnings presented in the class and clarify its applicability to application and performance back on the job. So those are just some of the best practices that I've learned that instructors can adopt to dispel these myths about virtual IoT is not as interactive as a traditional class.
Janet, recently you shared some advice on how to choose a virtual event platform. I know earlier in the conversation you talked about Adobe Connect. As learning professionals, we recognize how important it is to explore the training need. Is it just as critical when choosing a virtual event platform? And what are the most important questions you really should ask when you need to make that decision?
Yes. So with training in general, it's important to first understand the training need, the business need that the training is supposed to address. Now, once the business need is clear and the outcomes from the training are clear, if a decision is being made to deliver the training on a virtual platform, then it's important to understand that not all virtual platforms are created equally. Recently, I shared an article on LinkedIn that I found to be very informative in comparing the most popular virtual/video platforms such as WebEx, Adobe Connect, Zoom, GoToMeeting, and others. The article was originally written by Kimberly Alt of We Rock Your Web. So when choosing a platform, it's important, in my opinion, to first understand the following. Why do we need a new virtual platform? Is there something we already have that will suffice? For example, if your organization already uses WebEx for webinars, can we use it for live virtual training? Well, the answer is yes. But then the follow-up question is, does WebEx do efficiently and effectively everything that we need it to do? Well, then you have to dig deeper and understand the features and functionalities of that tool. Another question that I think is important to understand when choosing a platform is, what type of training and development do we expect to use it for? What type of content? Other questions, what features and functionality are required given the type of content? So for example, some virtual platforms don't integrate video very well. Adobe does. WebEx is a little bit more clunky. So again, you have to really know and understand the design of the course first off before you foray into choosing a platform. Another thing to think about is, do we want to integrate our platform with our existing learning management system? Some platforms can integrate well into an LMS, others can't. That may or may not be important for the organization. Do we want participants to be required to register? Some organizations, when they do virtual training, they require people to, well, when they offer live virtual training, they require people to register. Some tools do that well, others not so well. How intuitive do we need the platform to be? Will we expect virtual instructors to both host and facilitate? Or will there be a virtual classroom administrator? Now, when I first started my experience in virtual IoT for that Silicon Valley client, I had a virtual classroom administrator, and the role of the VCA was to take care of the platform, take care of all the technology issues, etc. A year or two into it, after we as instructors got more experience, then the client thought it was more cost effective. We can get rid of the virtual classroom administrators. So that meant that as an instructor, we were the host, we were the platform technology expert, we were the content expert, we were the facilitator. Mm-hmm. So we had to do it all. And today, when I work with clients using WebEx, I don't have a virtual classroom administrator. So I am what happens, I'll get an assignment from a client, they take care of all the enrollment on their end. There's a person who hosts the class originally, sets up the class, and then host privileges is passed to me so that I'm the host, I'm the facilitator, I'm the content expert, etc. And again, you can only pull this off through a vast amount of experience. And then another question, of course, is pricing. What's our budget for a virtual classroom platform? Because there's a wide variety of pricing options from 10 users to enterprise, licenses. So price, of course, has to play into it at all. The nice thing, though, is that because of COVID-19, a lot of these virtual platforms have become very creative in their pricing structure and are allowing more concurrent users, etc. So I think for the organization and the individuals who are really seeking out a new virtual platform, what I've just shared are some questions that they really need to answer first.
What are some features of those learning platforms that you find particularly effective? Many have the whiteboards and the raise your hand but what are some maybe little known features or just features that you find particularly helpful or effective?
Well, for me, one of the most prominent features that I use in all my classes is the breakout room feature. And that's because that's a way, again, like with the project management class, that's a way to introduce a concept, give a demonstration as the instructor, and then organize the class into groups of 4 or 5 individuals and have them do actual work. And when you can put them in a small breakout group, the same as what I would do when I delivered the classroom live, face to face. I break the classroom up. If it's a class of 20, I have 4 groups of 5 or 5 groups of 4, and they work on small components of they work on creating whatever that particular methodology component assigned to them is for that breakout group. So they have the opportunity to discuss and to learn from one another, not just myself. So breakouts are hugely, hugely effective in the virtual classroom environment. Polls are a way to get quick feedback. And the thing about polls, a lot of instructors who are new to virtual IoT, they will work with their virtual classroom administrator to create polls in advance. Absolutely. I think that is a best practice. Sometimes when I'm in the groove, I'll think of a poll and I'll say, okay, hold on for a minute. But again, you have to know the tool. You have to know the platform. So I can create a poll in like less than 1 minute, right? And put it up. So I really, really like polls. Sharing my screen, being able to go out to a web page or to share an article or something that I have recently seen and have that immediately brought into the classroom, have them read it for 2 or 3 minutes, and then we discuss it as a group. So really being able to incorporate a content just in time. If something pops into my mind that I want to share, being able to do that, I think is very, very important. And the last thing that I would say are the chats. I use chats this way. One, I encourage participants to chat with one another during the class. But I do require them to have the feature chat to everyone. Now, of course, if someone wants to send a private chat to someone, that's fine. But chat is another way for participants to share their thoughts real time without always raising their hand or asking the instructor, for the floor. So chat just allows an ongoing dialogue between class members throughout the course. So that's effective too. So those are some of my favorite tools that I use, irrespective of platform.
Sounds like it all makes for very exciting sessions, thinking about all these tools being leveraged.
It really does, Susan, it really does. But again, it's important to think through this. The only reason I'm able to do some just-in-time stuff is because I've been doing this for 15 years, right? And so I'm not a novice virtual IoT instructor. And I have experienced some pain and angst, from just like I was sharing a few minutes ago, from losing the internet, to teaching from a hotel room when I had back-to-back engagements and I was teaching off hours from a hotel room. I was teaching live starting at 9 a.m., say Pacific time, but I also had a course scheduled from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. because my participants were in Europe or somewhere else. And so now I'm up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., the hotel loses its internet. And so I have power, but I do not have the opportunity to do anything on the platform. But so what did I do? What I did was, because I was teaching from a hotel, I gave another participant the host privileges. My content was already loaded in the classroom.
That was smart.
So therefore, I always, especially when I teach from a hotel room, I had my materials hard copy in front of me. So the participant in class became the host, and I just had her navigate my content as I, was able to deliver over the phone, not necessarily over the computer. So again, you just have to be prepared for anything and everything. And I believe in that adage, never let them see you sweat. Right?
Well, without knowing it, you shared how many additional tips, right? With the have a hard copy in front of you.
Yes.
Designate somebody else to be the host. I mean, yeah, you've certainly run the gamut of situations that people might encounter.
Yes. And you have to, because technology being technology, I feel like the learners are giving up part of their work day to be there, and they deserve a great experience. So I do everything I can to make sure things are in place. Another thing that I have done as well is sometimes I'll have two computers going. So if something happens on one, I can just immediately flip over to another. So I may be the presenter and host on one computer and logged in with another email address as a participant. So again, those are just things that you learn over time and through experience. Prepare for the unexpected.
Switching to content. So do you find that certain content is better suited for virtual instructor-led than others, or is it really the design? Is it effective design that is really more important than necessarily the content?
Yeah, great question. All your questions are great. Thank you. The design, as I mentioned before, definitely matters. But I've had tremendous success teaching soft skills courses like leadership, communication, influencing skills, but also more complex topics like project management, program management, portfolio management. Other courses like resilience, conflict resolution, critical conversations, and even presentation skills are courses, or I should say course topics that I believe with the proper course design and the right platform and the right tools and an experienced facilitator can be delivered effectively. The designer of any course must first and foremost think of the learner experience, the targeted outcomes, and the targeted behavior change. Now, with the right focus on these things, unless one needs, say, hands-on experience, say they're learning how to perform surgery as an example, or some other activity that requires extensive hand-eye coordination, I think the possibilities for virtual instructor-led training are endless. In the education sector, K through 12 and higher ed, there's a tremendous opportunity to virtualize educational delivery. And you're seeing some of this now because of COVID-19. But I think to maximize that opportunity in K-12 and higher education, it would really require a mental shift from the mental models that currently define how education is to be delivered. So I would say that the design, of course, is front and center. But if it's courses that require a lot of hand-eye coordination under the supervision of an expert, then of course virtual IoT might not be sufficient. But in a professional business setting where a lot of the learning centers around professional topics such as the ones that I mentioned, conflict resolution, critical conversations, resilience, project management, program management, you can do some pretty tremendous stuff and deliver those types of courses very effectively in a VILT environment.
That's great. I'm sure many folks tuning in to listen to this are in that boat with that type of content. So it's reassuring to know that from your experience that the content is that type of content can be effective through VILT. So I saw that earlier in your career, you were a Six Sigma quality consultant. Earlier in my career, I kind of dabbled in this a little bit with a prior company that I had been in. So I was curious from your perspective, if there's any Six Sigma techniques or processes that you've incorporated into your approach to VILT.
Oh, Jenny, your question takes me way back, early career. Maybe at one point in the future, we'll have to share some Six Sigma stories. But it's an interesting question. But I think your question is highly relevant to what both business and education are really trying to do with virtual instructor-led training. Six Sigma, as you know, is concerned with eliminating process defects to the tune of 99.999 process accuracy. But it's the principles of Six Sigma that I believe are most relevant to virtual IoT. The first of 7 key Six Sigma principles is to focus on the customer. In virtual instructor-led training, the customer is both the learner and the organization. So in keeping with this principle, with VIOT or any training for that matter, it's really important to understand what the organization needs the learners to understand, know, and do. What is the desired level of performance that the organization expects from the learning process? From the perspective of the learner, it's important for the designer to understand how the learners learn best and which techniques have the greatest opportunity to engage them at a very high level. Another key aspect, as you know, Jenny, is Six Sigma, and is measurement. Another key aspect of Six Sigma is measurement. It is important to know if learning solutions go beyond the wonderful smile sheet at course end. So training must not only delight and wow learners, but it must also return desired behavior and performance change. So to gauge this, metrics must be put in place and tracked over a period of time. Learning and value metrics should also be systematic and scientific, very similar to metrics in a Six Sigma system. After all, if training does not translate to behavior and performance change, then this, I believe, violates another Six Sigma principle of producing waste. Waste is present, I believe, if no discernible value is returned from training. The training then has become nothing more than a feel-good exercise.
Well, thank you. That certainly took me way back as well, listening, the reminder of what those six are. So thank you.
Sure.
Certainly relevant. So having delivered training virtually for almost 20 years, what tips, I know you've offered so many already, maybe you can summarize or in a nutshell, what tips could you offer to trainers that maybe this is their first time having to do this because of where we are right now in the world and what's going on?
Absolutely. So for those just starting out, Jenny, and who are embarking upon transitioning from becoming a traditional IoT to a virtual IoT instructor, it's important for the instructor to understand his or her own delivery style. Because as I said earlier in our conversation, delivering virtual without any view of participant faces can be very uncomfortable for instructors. And so instructors have to learn very quickly if they're comfortable talking for extended periods of times to a computer screen instead of faces. And if that level of discomfort is extreme, then virtual IoT is probably not for them. Secondly, I think it's important for new VIOT instructors to understand the business drivers behind moving to VIOT. How does that factor into the larger training strategy of the organization? Third, I think it's helpful for new VIOT instructors to sit in to observe others who have mastered VIOT deliveries. And I use the word mastered intentionally, because I don't mean that new instructors should just sit in on someone else who's just getting started. No, they need to seek out and find people who have been doing this for a number of years and can provide a great model for them to emulate. This will give new VIOT instructors a taste of the real thing. Fourth, I think new instructors should look at the course design and the content with a very critical eye. It's important not to try to force fit what's done in a traditional class into VILT. As I talked before, when I was talking about the project management course, there were numerous activities that had to be redesigned to fit the virtual platform. We also had to create templates for every breakout exercise so that we would have consistency and effective time management practices in the virtual classroom. It's important that new instructors work with their instructional designers to redesign the content to the extent necessary, keeping the learning and performance outcomes front and center. And fifth, it's important to get intimate with the platform. I don't care whether it's WebEx, Adobe Connect, Citrix GoToTraining, Zoom, whatever the platform is, even if you're working with or have the luxury of working with a virtual classroom administrator, it's still important for the new instructor to get comfortable with the virtual classroom. Anything can happen. I've already shared some hiccups that I've had from internet going down, power going down, etc. Anything could happen. Your virtual classroom administrator might have to step away due to an emergency, and you want to be able to keep the class going. So as the instructor, you need to have a really good, intimate understanding of how to navigate through the platform. And lastly, I would say rehearse, 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 and then rehearse again. And by rehearse, I mean load up your platform, again, whether it's Adobe Connect, whether it's WebEx, whether it's whatever the case may be, load your content into the platform and practice your delivery, practice launching your polls, practice the breakout rooms. And a lot of the tools, they're such now that it's easy for you to go into a classroom, like an Adobe Connect classroom or a WebEx classroom, load content. You can even invite friends if you want to, or even if no one is in the classroom, you can still play around with 95% of the tools until you're comfortable. Practice, 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 rehearse, 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 and then rehearse again.
Janet, I would think in addition to being familiar with all those different platforms is staying up to date on all those platforms, because technology is changing all the time, especially in this field. So you may be an expert on one platform one day, but if you're not keeping up to date, you're not going to be an expert on it next week.
That's very true. That's very true. I mean, each of these platforms come out with different features and functionalities all the time. So staying abreast of what's happening in the market. There's some platforms that may remove a feature or modify a feature. I've used WebEx extensively and for working with and delivering virtually for different clients. And guess what, Susan? Different clients use different versions of WebEx. So when I work with client A, WebEx can do this. When I work with client B, WebEx does that. So again, it's take nothing for granted. It's really important to stay on top of the platform, stay on top of any new features and functionalities that come out. Because, one thing we do know is change is constant.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And I appreciate the rehearse, 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 practice, practice, practice. It's so true. I think sometimes trainers can hide behind the fact that it's, virtual and maybe don't feel that they need to prepare as much, when in reality, I think you have to prepare more if you're, leading a class through a virtual session as opposed to in the classroom.
You absolutely do. And as I stated before, when you are delivering virtually and cameras are not on, what does the class have to go on? They can't look at your smiley face. They can't look and see how beautiful or whatever you might be. None of that matters. What matters is how you use your voice. What matters is your mastery of the platform. What matters is how engaging you are. See, when I'm standing in front of an audience, real time, I can look at faces. I can see who's with me. I can see who's not with me. I can see who's looking down, who's looking up. I can walk around the classroom and what have you. And in this particular case, that even though I can go in and out of breakout rooms, but I can't walk around the classroom. So my questioning skills have to be on point. There are some VILT instructors that believe that you shouldn't call on people at random. So the class I did a couple of weeks ago, that 8-hour a day for 3 straight days, in the feedback from the comments, a few people, one of the things that they stated that one of the things they liked was because I called on individuals purposely to draw everybody into the classroom. Because the other thing that we have to remember is when you are delivering virtually, and this really pertains to a live classroom as well. But again, in the live classroom, you can see individuals. But when I have people logged on into the class from different geographies, you have to be culturally sensitive to the fact that people of certain cultures are not comfortable just speaking up. Some people prefer to be called upon. And so if I'm teaching virtually and I can't see people, I have to be respectful and a bit knowledgeable on certain cultural nuances, because I don't want anybody to think that just because they may have English as a second language or they speak with an accent, that what they have to say is not important. So I have to be able to draw these people into the class just like I would anybody else. So your questioning skills and how you draw people into the class, and the level of excitement that you can exude through your voice, and even though they can't see you, but teaching with a smile does really change the sound of your voice and how you are being perceived. Because what I've learned is that people on the other end, they can feel your passion as the instructor. They can feel your energy as the instructor, and you get back what you put in. And so if you don't recognize that your voice, your rate of speech, your voice inflection, your questioning skills, your ability to smile without being seen, if you don't realize as an instructor that those are your gifts to making the learning experience truly exceptional, then you're going to, you're not going to have, one, great feedback, and two, you're not going to give the learners the wow experience that they deserve.
Well, Janet, we can't thank you enough. Certainly, Jenny and I can feel your passion, and I'm sure our listeners can as well. This has been very inspirational and some great advice for instructors who are going to be trying VILT, whether it's for the first time or they're looking to improve their skills. We really thank you very much for sharing your insights today.
Oh, you're very welcome. And it was wonderful to connect with you both after the past 5 years.
Good luck to you in the rest of your career.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Jenny, Janet had so much valuable advice. What do you think are some of the key takeaways from your discussion with her today?
I agree, Susan. Wow, she gave so many tips and tricks and ideas that I wish when I did this years ago I would have had. But I have a list I was kind of keeping when she was speaking. So I'll just run through some of them. Even the reminder to the lesson learned about not doing intros is huge. Everyone thinks they need to do intros, but in this, it's just going to take too long. Use breakouts, I thought was key. I think a lot of people shy away from those because it's a little bit more work to set them up, but they are so valuable, and you can assign real world application type work and projects and assignments to the breakout groups. I like the idea of providing a template so every breakout session is consistent. That helps as well. Don't be afraid to engage your audience before with the pre-work. Some tricks she said about have a hard copy in front of you. She even uses 2 computers in case one craps out on her. So
that was smart.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the tip about prepare in the design. Spend so much time in the design, even more so if it's instructor led, because really have to take advantage of those tools. That's really what's going to build in that interactivity and really make it an effective sessions. So don't be afraid to use the tools, the chats, the breakouts, and how she ended it with the rehearse, practice.
And then practice some more and rehearse some more.
Yeah. Yeah, just so much valuable information.
Yeah, great tips. Really, it was wonderful to hear from her, and I think good advice for us. And as we look to work with DaVinci clients who are looking to do VILT, and certainly anybody else listening in the industry, had some great takeaways from Janet. So, thanks, Jenny, and many, many thanks to Dr. Janet Lockhart Jones for joining us today. You can learn more about Dr. Jones by searching for her and her articles on LinkedIn. And if you have any questions about what we talked about today, you can also reach out to us on DaVinci social channels through our website, davinci.com, or by emailing us at poweredbylearning@davinci.com.
Powered by Learning is brought to you by DaVinci Interactive. For more than 25 years, DaVinci has provided custom learning solutions to government agencies, corporations, medical education and certification organizations, and educational content providers. We collaborate with our clients to bring order and clarity to content and technology. Learn more at davinci.com.